I had always believed that a mother's love was unconditional. But that belief was deeply shaken by an event that occurred during those cloudy days at the end of October. It was the beginning of 5 days that would forever change our family's life in Chester County, not far from Philadelphia. I'm Elizabeth Parker, a math teacher at the local high school. My colleagues call me Liz, and I've spent most of my 38 years in this area. I live with my husband John and our 6-year-old son Ethan in an old Victorian house, where we've woven a simple but genuine happiness. As a teacher, I've always made it a point to notice subtle changes in children. The same goes for my own child. Ethan is special. Though quiet, he sometimes shows an uncanny intuition that even adults can't comprehend. One summer when he was 2, during a family camping trip, Ethan suddenly started crying, saying, "Water's coming." Just after we finished packing up, an unexpected downpour caused the stream to flood. While the campsite was submerged, our family was safe. Since then, I've never been able to dismiss Ethan's premonitions. Truth be told, I've had similar abilities since childhood. But I've suppressed them, living instead as a math teacher who values logical thinking and scientific explanations. Yet I can't deny Ethan's gift. If anything, his abilities seem to be growing stronger each year. That day, we were visiting John's family home. It was the 5th day since Martha, my mother-in-law, had disappeared. She had always been faithful about video calling with Ethan, but suddenly all contact ceased. A woman who had worked as a librarian for 40 years and continued volunteering even after retirement, her sudden disappearance had left the police investigation at a standstill. "Liz, didn't you notice anything odd about Mom?" David, my brother-in-law, asked me in the living room after dinner. His wife Christine sat deep in an antique sofa, wearing her typical flashy red dress. Perhaps due to her former career as a cabaret performer, she still favors dramatic makeup and clothing. No. Martha was her usual self. Even last Sunday at dinner, she was happily talking about her volunteer work at the library. I gazed out at the garden where leaves were beginning to turn, remembering the events of a week ago. Indeed, Martha had seemed normal, sharing library memories with her warm smile. James, my father-in-law who passed away a year ago, had been a businessman who ran a local construction company. Though strict, he was known for being fair. His death cast a long shadow over the entire family. Martha, in particular, had showered even more affection on Ethan since her husband's passing. "Seems like the police search isn't getting anywhere," Christine said in her sultry voice. David appeared strangely calm, sipping whiskey from his father's crystal glass. He'd always been troubled, struggling with a gambling addiction since childhood. Though he appeared reformed on the surface, something lurking behind his eyes made me uneasy. My gaze was drawn to the old well at the back of the garden. Sealed over 30 years ago, it was the most eerie presence on the property. A moss-covered stone well, fitting for the Victorian-style house, reportedly built in the early 1900s. "Mommy." Ethan tugged at my sleeve. My usually quiet son seemed strangely restless today, his eyes trembling with anxiety. "What is it, Ethan?" "Over there." Ethan pointed at the old well. I felt my spine freeze. Ethan had predicted James's death a week before it happened, saying Grandpa will become a star. Just as he said, James died suddenly of a heart attack. My husband John had found success in architectural design. Choosing his own path instead of taking over his father's company had caused some family friction for a while. But he's a good supporter who understands the special abilities that Ethan and I possess. Today, due to an important meeting, we had to visit his family home without him. "Liz, there's something we need to discuss about the inheritance." David's voice cut through the heavy air. Fluorescent light highlighted the sweat on his forehead. "Mommy, Grandma is..." Ethan's voice trembled. I could feel his small body tensing in my arms. "Grandma is crying." At that moment, a light rain began to fall from the cloudy sky. The maple leaves in the garden swayed as they caught the raindrops. Rain fell one drop at a time on the edge of the old well, like someone's tears. "Ethan, that's dangerous." I placed my hand on my son's shoulder, but Ethan didn't move. He kept his arms stretched straight toward the old well in the backyard. His golden hair swayed in the wind under the darkening sky. But I can hear Grandma's voice. She's saying help. She's in a cold, dark place. The drizzle intensified, echoing off the maple leaves in the garden. I gripped my son's hand tightly. His small hand was ice cold. There was a different light in Ethan's eyes than usual. "What do you mean, Ethan? Tell me more." I could hear my own voice shaking. Experience had taught me never to ignore when Ethan showed his special abilities. "In a dark place underground. Grandma is chained." Ethan's voice trailed off. I caught my breath. The rusty well cover made an eerie sound as the rain hit it. The gap visible at the edge of the cover suggested a bottomless darkness. "Liz, it's dark and dangerous," Christine called out. There seemed to be a hint of panic in her voice. "Yes, but..." I turned on my smartphone's light. My legs shook as I approached the old well. The rain-slicked ground required careful steps. "Liz, that's dangerous. That well was sealed 30 years ago. You shouldn't get close." David's voice rang out from behind. His usual calmness was gone, replaced by visible anxiety. Drops of either rain or sweat glistened on his forehead. "But Ethan..." My hand stopped as I reached for the cover. Fear of what lay ahead dominated my entire body. As a teacher and mother, I'd always tried to maintain logical judgment. But now, Ethan's intuition was shaking my rationality. "Mommy, please, help Grandma. She's suffering." Ethan's voice strengthened my resolve. When I moved the heavy cover, a damp earthy smell rose up. The flashlight beam cut through the deep darkness. It can't be. What my eyes found was an unbelievable sight. About 5 meters down from the surface, I could faintly make out a human figure. "Liz." A weak voice echoed. It was Martha's voice. She was chained to the wall, curled up small. Her usually well-kept silver hair was dirty with mud. "Martha, are you all right? Watch out, behind you." The warning came too late. I lost my balance from a strong impact from behind. I grabbed the well's edge instinctively, but the wet stone was slippery, and my fingers were slowly loosening. "Mommy!" As Ethan's scream rang out, something awakened within me in response to his voice. A strange sensation spread from my fingertips. It was as if the entire well had connected to my consciousness. "We can't have you meddling, Liz," David's cold voice echoed. His hand gripped my shoulder firmly. Why would you do this?" "For the money." Christine's voice came from behind. There was no longer any attempt to maintain pretenses. "If you just stay still, no one has to get hurt. Including Ethan." At those words, something exploded inside me. The ability I had been suppressing burst forth like a broken dam. The well's stonework trembled slightly as if in resonance. "Mom, are you okay?" Ethan's voice cut through the darkness. There was a strange power in his voice. A sensation like space-time warping enveloped my entire body. At that moment, the air around the well changed. The rain intensified, and the garden trees began to sway ominously. The old house's shutters rattled irregularly in the wind. "What's happening?" Christine's voice couldn't hide her agitation. I felt David's grip loosen. I closed my eyes and concentrated. The mysterious power I'd felt since childhood. Something that couldn't be explained by science, yet undeniably existed. It was now awakening within me. A faint vibration transmitted through the well's stonework. This wasn't just an earthquake. It was as if the memories sleeping in this place, thoughts that transcended time, were speaking to us. "I can see," Ethan whispered. His eyes held an unusual light. "In this well, long ago, someone." His words rang out like suggesting a new mystery. Martha's expression changed in the well, as if she had realized something. Amidst the intersection of past and present, we were about to face an unexpected truth. "Ethan, listen carefully to what I say." I spoke to my son in as calm a voice as I could manage. My intuition told me that Ethan's special abilities would be essential to getting through this situation. The rain continued to fall, and the surroundings grew increasingly dark. The old well gaped before us like an entrance to a story that transcended time. No one could predict how the truth that awaited us would change our family's bonds. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. The logical thinking I developed as a math teacher rapidly organized the situation. "David, Christine, what do you hope to achieve with this?" I deliberately softened my tone. Showing hostility would put Ethan in danger. That had to be avoided at all costs. "What do we hope to achieve? Isn't it obvious?" Christine answered in her sultry voice. Her flashy makeup had smeared in the rain, creating an eerie expression like something from a horror movie. "Money." It's all about money. Because your husband didn't take over the company, David had to shoulder everything. But that company had enormous debts. I slowly activated my smartphone's recorder. My fingers trembled as they touched the screen in my wet pocket. Ethan, can you go back inside the house and call Mrs. Watson? I casually instructed my son. Mrs. Watson was the elderly neighbor lady. A trustworthy person we often saw at weekend potluck dinners. Ethan nodded slightly and began to slowly back away. David noticed. Wait. That kid isn't going anywhere. David, calm down. I immediately changed the subject. If it's about the inheritance, we can talk it through. I'm sure Martha would. It's too late. Christine cut in. David has $5 million in debt. And the lenders aren't ordinary banks. We only have 3 days left. The rain grew stronger. Small puddles were beginning to form around the old well. But Martha already gave you over $1 million. It's not enough. David's shout pierced through the rain. Mom refused to give more money. That's why we had no choice. I looked at Martha in the well. She appeared weak but maintained a dignified expression. Just then, I heard a sound from inside the house. Realizing that Ethan was surely taking action, I made my next move. If it's money, my husband and I have savings. David's eyes lit up. Really? How much? But we'd need John's approval. Christine showed an anxious expression. There's no time. If we don't pay it back within 3 days, then let's do this. I carefully chose my words. I'll call John right now and tell him it's an emergency. I'm sure he'll. At that moment, police sirens began wailing in the distance. The blood drained from David's face. Someone called the police. Christine screamed. Her voice clearly showed her agitation. That has nothing to do with us. I continued speaking while feigning calm. Let's resolve everything here before the police arrive. About the money. Shut up. David grabbed my collar. His eyes held a madness that seemed ready to explode at any moment. You'll go in the well too. Then. Just then, the garden lights suddenly blazed bright, and police officers rushed into the garden. Behind them were Mrs. Watson and Ethan. Ethan. I couldn't help crying out. My son was safe. Moreover, several neighbors had gathered with flashlights. This can't be. David muttered. Christine had already raised her hands in surrender. David tried to run but slipped on the rain-wet ground and fell, becoming motionless. The police quickly subdued him. While waiting for the rescue team to arrive, I kept talking to Martha in the well. Though she looked tired, there was a determined light in her eyes. The rain continued to fall, but now its sound felt like hope. Light was breaking through the darkness, signaling the end of a long nightmare. The sound of ambulance sirens approached, mixing with the rain. Martha was rescued from the well by the rescue team and immediately transported to the hospital. As I watched her being taken away, various emotions crossed through me. In the hospital waiting room, we waited for the examination results in a white corridor that smelled of disinfectant. Ethan slept exhausted on my lap, while John stood with his hand on my shoulder in silence. How reassuring my husband's presence was now. "Ma'am." A doctor in a white coat approached. "Mrs. Martha shows physical exhaustion, but there's no danger to her life. With proper rest." A sigh of relief escaped. That night, during the police investigation, all the truth came to light. While David appeared successful in real estate on the surface, he actually had enormous debt. $5 million. The creditors were local mafia. They demanded repayment within 3 days, and that deadline was approaching. "I can't believe it," John muttered. His voice was tinged with disappointment and sadness toward his brother. Even more shocking facts emerged. Christine had another man, who turned out to be a mafia executive. She had been tasked with manipulating David's vulnerabilities to rush the inheritance process. "David, why didn't you talk to Mom?" John questioned his brother in the interrogation room. We watched through the observation room's glass. "I had already borrowed over $1 million from Mom." David's voice trembled. "But it wasn't enough. Dad's life insurance, the company's sale proceeds, everything went to gambling." His confession revealed the family's darkness. Lack of affection since childhood. Conflict with his father. These drove him to gambling, and that addiction derailed his life. A few days later, Martha told us everything from her hospital room. She had already known about David's debts. "That child has been starved for affection since he was little." Martha's voice carried deep maternal love. "Your father was too strict. But that was just his awkward way of showing love. David couldn't understand that." She had poured most of her retirement savings into trying to save her son. But it wasn't enough. And as a last resort, I tried to make him give up the inheritance. I had started procedures to donate all assets to charity. That decision had driven David into a corner. "But Grandma." Ethan approached the hospital bed. "Why did you tell me?" Martha gently stroked her grandson's head. "I don't know myself. But you and Liz have a special power. It's an ability my mother had too." I caught my breath at those words. An ability passed down through generations. It wasn't mere coincidence. My mother was of the last generation to know this land's history. This well was said to have mysterious powers since ancient times. Martha's story took an even more surprising turn. This land had once been a sacred site for indigenous people. The well built there sometimes harbored mysterious powers. "That's why I believed in your power, Ethan. And in the power sleeping within you too, Liz." Martha gripped my hand with trembling fingers. "You might be the guardians chosen by this land." Over the next few weeks, events moved quickly. David was arrested, and Christine would also stand trial as an accomplice. The mafia investigation progressed, leading to the collapse of their organization. However, the more important changes occurred within our family. "Mommy," Grandma told me, Ethan said one morning, "our power exists to protect people." I nodded deeply at those pure words. The ability I had suppressed for so long. It wasn't something to fear, but a gift to protect those we love. After discharge, Martha came to recuperate at our house. Her presence fostered new bonds within the family. "Mom." One evening, John called out to Martha. "About David." "It's all right." Martha smiled gently. "A mother's love has no conditions." That's what Liz taught me. Outside the window, rain was falling quietly. But it was no longer something to fear. It had become a gentle rain that would nurture new growth. The old well was completely sealed with concrete. However, its memory will continue to hold special meaning for our family. Rather than a symbol of fear, it became precious evidence of the bonds we reaffirmed with each other.